France is now ungovernable. You better believe it. France is now ungovernable. The country that actually made its money from bleeding black people. The country that forced Haiti to pay 150 billion for their freedom. And one of the reasons why Haiti is still in the situation it is right now is because of France. France, the country that bled Africa, making sure that the countries that it colonized basically had to pay a colonial tax for being colonized. That country, the country that one of the biggest slave traders in the world, that country has run out of money. They cannot afford to pay the pensions. They cannot afford the healthcare system. Literally, France is literally on the verge of economic collapse. And this is serious. France is in worse trouble than Greece was, except at the time the European Union was so powerful at the time. But now the European Union was weakened by Brexit. The European Union has been weakened by Trump turning against them. So now the European Union, they're just running around like headless chickens. They cannot even bail France out. France is literally on the verge of collapse. And coming close after France is going to be the UK and Germany.
So the French government has fallen again. But international news media is going to be very shy about telling us the real reason why it's fallen. The economic reasons why it's fallen. On his way out, the ousted Prime Minister, Mr. Francois, said, "You might kick me out, you might remove me, but that does not change the economic problems for the country." I'm paraphrasing. The real reason why France has failed as a government is because Africa has taken its power back. Ever since the country of Niger, in the Sahel, in Central West Africa, decided to nationalize its uranium, France has never been the same again. This uranium that state-owned companies like Orano, French-owned companies like Orano had been siphoning, stealing under the previous government. Today, Niger turned off the faucet. Niger said no more. So Niger, under the new governance of President Tiani, is nationalizing its uranium. This uranium France was stealing not only to light its beautiful cities like Paris and Nice, it was also using it to run its electrical manufacturing and industries. All of these are processing and running their nuclear reactors on top of it all. So these things that are the foundations of an economy, like manufacturing and processing, right now that the electricity in France, their energy is not safe. They do not have a reliable place to get their energy from. This is why they're suffering. But it's not going to be told that way on international news media. You're only going to hear it from people like me and others who are truth tellers. So yeah, this is why. This is what happens. This is proof that African leaders are in service of either them or us.
Réveille-toi, le pouvoir est à toi. Français, réveille-toi, le pouvoir est à toi.
So France is broke because African countries have kicked them out and they don't allow them to exploit them anymore. And as you saw, there's a big rally in the country. They're protesting the president, Macron. They want him out. Yesterday they voted out the prime minister, which was the third prime minister in 14 months. He got a vote of no confidence. The same last three, because the last three prime ministers cannot present a bill or cannot present a plan on how to revitalize the French economy. Now, the only way to present a plan to revitalize the French economy is by re-enslaving or re-exploiting African countries. And Russia is helping African countries. Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, they're building nuclear plants. Like, it's helping African countries. That's Russia's plan of fucking up the West. So the West is using a proxy war to destroy Russia. Russia is deciding, okay, I'm going to take away your means of living. So Russia has been saving African countries from France. And they have a planned demonstration tomorrow, the 10th. Wednesday, the whole nation is going to have this massive demonstration tomorrow in protest of Macron. But yeah, France is broke. And everything they're doing right now, a lot of the French understand it, but majority of the masses don't. Everything they're doing right now, nothing can be done. The only way France goes back to where it used to be is to find new countries to exploit for resources. That's it. France has nothing. They have nothing. England is next. Oh, I also forgot to add, this is why France has been pushing for a war with Russia. France has gotten 26 countries right now to agree to invade, to go into Ukraine, which is going to be a violation, which will force a war with Russia. The reason France wants this is if it does that, then Russia is now faced with more problems, more wars. Then it takes away some of its resources from Africa. It creates new chaos, and then France uses that as an opportunity to go back into Africa and then find new countries to exploit. The only way France can survive is exploitation. So they need war right now to make that exploitation happen.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the collapse of an empire in real time. While you are scrolling through TikTok, France, France, the country that gave us croissants and the Eiffel Tower and centuries of smug superiority, is literally falling apart. And here is the kicker that mainstream media won't tell you. It's happening because Africa finally said, yo, pay me. And actually, no, we are keeping our own money now. Okay, and this is not just another European economic hiccup. This is the sound of colonial chickens coming home to roast so loudly that it's shaking the entire continent. And if you think this doesn't affect you, think again, because when a nuclear-powered nation with 67 million people starts economically hemorrhaging, the ripple effects don't stop at borders. I've got some clips here. Let's watch them, then I'll be back with my further commentary on this.
If you're in France today, don't expect it to be a journée habituelle. Is it because the government just collapsed? Partly. But there's also a viral grassroots campaign called Bloquons Tout that's calling for a day of nationwide civil disobedience. What kind? Blocking train stations, picketing oil refineries, targeting transport, schools, public institutions, and logistics hubs. So what are people mad about? Well, it used to be about the budget that soon-to-be former Prime Minister François Bayrou proposed. That included scrapping 2 national holidays, freezing pensions, and cutting 5 billion euros from health spending. That's off the table now, but people still want fiscal policy reform and better living standards. But wait, isn't this just like the
Les Gilets jaunes.
Yellow vests.
Not exactly. In case you missed it, the Gilets jaunes was a grassroots protest movement in late 2018 that started from a fuel tax hike but quickly erupted into nationwide demonstrations against inequality. The Gilets jaunes came largely from rural France, while Bloquons Tout heavily skews towards younger, more educated, and politically engaged people from the left. How left? Pretty left. Many of them support Jean-Luc Mélenchon, de facto leader of La France Insoumise. With the government's implosion, France is now in hot water. Will the Bloquons Tout changer?
Clashes between the police and the French have broken out in the streets of Paris. Videos emerging from Gare du Nord show police in riot gear in clashes, and sometimes they were videoed being violent to the protesters. Now, the protesters have come out in full swing because they are protesting the dire economic situation that is in France. Now, the French government collapsed a couple of days ago, and the French government have not been honest with the French. They haven't come out and said that the reason that the French have basically become bankrupt is because they can no longer steal money from Africa, because Africans have kicked them out. So it is impossible to look at their populations in the face and say, all the money that we had, we were stealing it from Africa, and now the Africans have kicked us out. We've got nowhere else to get the money from. And hence, the chaos continues because the French are so puzzled. They don't understand why their country has no money, why they've got no money for infrastructure, no money for resources, no money for pensions. But the government cannot tell them in the face that for all these years, they have been sustained by money that was stolen from Africans who were literally starving whilst they were enjoying the African money.
Okay, welcome back to the channel, and I like you to picture this. You're France for over 50 years. You've been the kid at the school who is only popular because you steal lunch money from 14 other kids and use it to buy everyone else snacks. You've built your entire identity, your entire lifestyle, your entire sense of self-worth around this theft. Your nuclear reactors harm with uranium you didn't pay for. Your cities glow with lights powered by resources you stole. Your social programs funded by forcing African nations to send you up to 80% of their yearly revenues. And then one day, those 14 kids grow up and get stronger and collectively decide, you know what? F this man, we're keeping our lunch money. You won't steal us from us again. That's France right now, and it's not pretty. Right? Let's talk about numbers, because these numbers are insane. France is drowning in 3.34 trillion euros of debt. Trillion with a T. That's not, oh, we're having budget issues, money. No, that's we might have to sell the Mona Lisa to pay rent money. They can't fund pensions. They can't maintain healthcare. Companies are fleeing the country like rats from a sinking ship, and employment is skyrocketing. But here's what absolutely wild. The mainstream media is treating this like it's some mysterious economic downturn. Oh, France is having political instability. That's why they have this economic collapse. Oh, they can't keep a prime minister for more than 12 months. As if this is happening in a vacuum. As if there is no connection between France and suddenly losing access to African uranium, African gold, African revenues, and France suddenly becoming, what's the technical term? Oh, right, broke. Yeah, France right now is broke. And the best part, the absolute chef's kiss of this entire situation, they've kicked out 4 prime ministers in 12 months. 4. At this point, being prime minister of France, who has worse job security than being a Twitter employee under Elon Musk. President Macron is clinging to power. Like that one friend who refuses to admit the party is over, even though everyone's already called their Uber. Like, they want to go home, but he's still there. Critics are literally calling for his removal while he's out here like, none, everything is fine. This is just economic turbulence, Yep. Meanwhile, French citizens are so pissed off, they are planning nationwide civil disobedience. They are calling it Blanc Noir, basically block everything day. Train stations, oil refineries, schools, logistics hubs, they want to shut down the entire country, because when your government can't explain why you suddenly can't afford pensions but won't admit it's because you are stealing from African nations who are literally starving, people tend to get a little upset. There is no need for you French people to get mad. Okay, let us zoom out for a moment and examine what really are witnessing here, because this is not just about France. This is about the end of an era. For centuries, European prosperity has been built on a simple formula. 1. Extract wealth from global south, use that wealth to fund development and social programs at home. Then lecture the world about democracy and human rights. France perfected this system. They didn't just colonize. They created neo-colonial structures so sophisticated, so deeply embedded that African nations were still depending. They were still sending majority of their revenues to Paris decades after independence. The CFA, Franc economic partnerships, cultural ties, these weren't just preacher names for the same old extraction. And now we are watching what happens when that system breaks down. When Niger says we are nationalizing our uranium, when Mali, Burkina Faso, and Chad, Senegal collectively give France the finger and show them the door, when the foundation of European prosperity, the exploitation of African resources, suddenly disappears. This is what happens. And here's what terrifying and fascinating in equal measure. France's solutions to this crisis appears to be starting another war. They are pushing for expanded involvement in Ukraine, allegedly hoping that if they can bog Russia down in conflict, it creates enough chaos to somehow sneak back into Africa and resume the exploitation. But don't I have news for you, France? Think about that for a second. A nuclear power facing economic collapse because it can no longer steal from its former colonies. It's potentially looking at military conflict as an economic strategy. That's not foreign policy. That's desperation. And the European Union, they are running around like headless chickens because they know France is not the only country in this position. The UK is heavily dependent on Nigeria. Germany has its own web of extractive relationships. If this domino effect continues, if African nations keep reclaiming their sovereignty and resources, we could be looking at a fundamental reshaping of global power structures. And I'm telling you, one day, this first world will collapse. But hearing about any of this in mainstream media, CBC, BBC, CNN, Fox News drawing these connections. They can't, of course, because acknowledging that France crisis is directly linked to the end of African exploitation will require admitting that European prosperity was built on theft. It will require confronting centuries of wealth extraction, of imposed poverty, of resource flowing from global south to European capitals, while African children starved. They didn't get education, no electricity, no food. Instead, we get sanitized coverage about political instability and economic challenges. What challenges, bro? We get talking heads discussing demographic changes and immigration without mentioning that maybe, just maybe, people wouldn't need to leave their home countries if those countries weren't being systemically robbed by European powers. And here's why this matters to you. Wherever you are, this is not just about France or even Europe. This is about watching a system of global exploitation finally facing its consequences. For decades, we've been told that this extraction was normal, inevitable, just how the world works. How? But when we see in France right now is what happens when oppressed nations finally say no. When they reclaim their resources, their sovereignty, their right to benefit from their own wealth, and the result, the supposed civilized nations start to fall apart. Right? So next time when someone tells you that wealth inequality is just natural, that some countries are just naturally richer than others, that poverty in Africa is just an unfortunate reality. Remember France in 2025. Remember a nuclear power collapsing because it can no longer steal uranium from Niger. Remember 6-7 million people facing economic crisis because 14 African nations decided to keep their own money. I don't know what you think about this, but yeah, the fall is coming. First world countries are becoming third worlds, and the third world countries are going to rise and become first world countries. This is the renaissance of Africa. If you concur with me, kindly hit that like button, subscribe, comment, and share. I hope to see you in my next video.